Let's take a look at the map function in Python. The map function is going to be an easier way for us to do something with an iterable object, like a list, a tuple, or a dictionary. So we can very quickly apply a certain function using the map function to our list or our tuple or a dictionary. So here for this practice code, I have a list called nums. It has several integers, 4, 8, 15, 23, 42. And if we wanted to take these values at each index location, multiply it by 2, and then store it back into the same list or store it back into a list, we would use a loop. That's how we've been taught. So we would have something like this, where I have a function called longways. I'm passing it the nums list. We have a documentation string. Then in a loop for the length of the list, we will take each index value, multiply it by 2, store it back into itself, and print that out at the end. And then if I execute this function, we should see 8, 16, 30, 46, 84, which those are 4 times 2, 8 times 2, 15 times 2, okay? So that would have been the long way to do something with this iterable object, to use a loop. But maps allow us to do it a shorter way. So I'm going to comment out my call for that previous function, and we're going to create an easier function called easier, because why not? So this easier function is going to accept a value, and then it's going to return that value times it 2. Okay? That's all that function needs to do. Now, if we want to use the map object, in this case, I'm going to store it into a new object called results. And I'm going to say map. And then you can see here in our documentation, we type the function name and then what iterable we want. In this case, it's our list nums. So the function we want to execute is easier, and we want nums. Okay, so if I print results, you may have saw this at the beginning of the video because I forgot to clear it, we get a map object, and I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that's its memory location. That's where this object is being stored. So what we would actually need to do is take this map object and translate it into a list. So if we do print list of results and run this code again, then we get the same thing for 16, 30, 46, 84. I believe we could even do our list function here, and then if we print results, we should get the same thing. And we did, 8, 16, 30, 46, 84. Okay, so the map function takes the function that we want to execute and some iterable objects like a list, a tuple, or a dictionary, and performs that function on each item in that particular iterable object, and then returns that object. But it returns that object as a map object. If we want to change it to a list or a dictionary or a tuple, we would still need to perform that method on that particular return value. Okay? So at this point, it's a good time to introduce Lambda functions. Lambda functions are anonymous functions. Anonymous functions don't really have a name. They just take any number of arguments and they can only have one expression. That means basically they can only do one equation. So these are really nice if you need to type out a function in a hurry. Okay, so the syntax is just the keyword lambda, any arguments that you have, and then a colon, and then whatever expression you want. So in this case, I'm saying in X store lambda A, which is our argument, and then the colon, and then whatever we send to A, we will add 10 to it and return that. That will be the value of X. So when I print X of 5, So I'm saying give x a value of 5, and that goes up here and sends that 5 here, which sends that 5 here, which adds the two together and returns 15. So when I run this code, we get a 15. Okay, so why are these so useful? Well, remember our maps. So we could take essentially this line, well, let me see, these 3 lines of code and change it to just this. Okay, so if I execute this code, the first line of code is what we did when we were looking at the maps tutorial, and all we did was a lambda x. We said x times 2 and sent it also the list num. So it looped through, because of the math object lets us loop through an iteration of something, and it took each item in our list, multiplied it by 2, and then returned that to L results. So lambdas are pretty useful when we get into maps, but at the very least you should know what the code looks like if you ever encounter it when you're looking at other people's code. So another one of these high-level functions, similar to the map function, is the filter function. And the filter function will take an iterable, and with the help of another function, it can test every value in that element for either a true or false value. So it could take a list that had like a combination of items, like ints and strings, and maybe there were also booleans like trues and falses in there, or it could take something like this, which is our nums list that we used in the last example. So the syntax for the filter function, it's just the name of the function that's going to give us a true or false, and then whatever iterable, a list, a dictionary, a tuple, etc. Okay? So here I've created a function that is going to test to see if x is an even number. So if we mod 2, and mod 2, remember, gives us the remainder, and if that remainder is 0, then it is an even number and it will return the value true. Otherwise, it's going to return false. So here I just did another object, even nums, and I did change it to a list because just like map, the filter will return an object. So it would return the filter object like the math function returned a math object. And I passed it this function filter even, and I passed it my list nums. So when I execute this code, it's going to tell me all of the even numbers that were in my list. So 4, 8, and 42 are indeed only the even numbers in my list. But that also leads us into Lambda. So we could, again, use Lambda and simplify our code. So let's say I have another object called enums, and again, I'll do the list, I'll do the filter, but this time instead of calling another function, I'm going to use my anonymous function Lambda. And this is just checking to see if it is indeed an even number. I'm sending it the nums value, and if I print enums, we'll have the exact same result that we had in our earlier code. So let's run, and again, 4842. So this line of code here essentially did what all of these lines of code did. Okay, so the Lambda can help you simplify if you just have like a quick and dirty function that you need to run, just something short and sweet. It can't be too complicated, but it's nice to have that ability when you have something simple like this. So remember that filter, we can filter an iterable object with the help of whether it has a true or false value. So what I would like for you guys to do, I've posted some other videos below this video, and they're not super mandatory. Like maybe you really got lambdas, and maybe you really got filters, and maybe you really got maps. But you might want to watch those videos. They're not very long, but they just explain things a little differently than I do, and it might help you grasp the concepts better. So try those out, and they should be posted right below this video.